Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your back channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about free speech, what's considered as free speech, and how free speech is increasingly, through the propaganda machine, being viewed as hate speech, almost by default. Also, how pro-globalist people are held to a different legal standard than anti-globalist people, and how migrants and migrant activists are held to a different standard of law than are, white local citizens in the West. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. Now, just to sort of illustrate the point, I'll mention a few cases. There were some recent migrants from third world peasant countries, and the government either is ineffective in or does not provide any acclimatization classes or courses, and they should be compulsory to these people. So these people arrive from they're rural peasants in a third world country, and they come to Australia, can't speak a lick of English, and so on, and they immediately go out into the forests and start killing protected Australian marsupials. Some of these marsupials don't have a whole lot of natural predators, so they're not hard to kill. Many of them, like koalas and that sort of thing, at some stage they've been in human care, so they're not really frightened of humans. So these third world peasants get their bows and arrows and their harpoons and spears and all that thing, and go out and start mass killing of these protected Australian marsupial species. Now, this is all kept very quiet. They should be front page news all across the mainstream media, but it's not. These stories get buried, a bit like when black people kill white people, you don't hear the stories. If it's the other way around, it's a screaming international headline for days on end. This falls into the same category. So anyway, these in one instance, these third world peasants were stopped for speeding by a policeman that smelt the rancid meat and so what's going on here? Open up the boot to find it was full of these dead marsupials. Now the policeman arrested them, and all the police officers arrested them. The Department of Prosecution was put a very junior trainee lawyer onto it. They clearly weren't interested, didn't want to go after these people at all. They were doing it almost reluctantly, and these people were let off with the judge. They managed to get an activist judge, very pro-immigration judge, to hear the case, and the judge said, "Nah, you're okay. Look, you're a little bit naughty, but you don't know any better, and so." Hey, don't do it again. Off you go now. Bye-bye. And that was it. So now contrast this with a case where a white guy, local citizen, straight white male, who'd been living in the rural areas, that was, in the remote rural areas, and he'd been killing incorrectly, by the way. It was illegal, and he should face prosecution for it. Going after protected species and killing them and so on, and eating them and whatnot. And now he was caught, and he got 3 years prison, 6 months, then some sort of suspended sentence or something like that. So, with good behaviour, he'd have been out in 3 months. But that's not the point. He got 3 years, a penalty of both detention and community service and all sorts of stuff. He got 3 years, but the other guys got nothing. Now, that he maybe should have got a slightly higher sentence because he knew, but then why didn't the others know? Why are these people just allowed? Well, you didn't know. And if that is the case, then why aren't every immigrant, particularly the third world peasants, being given a short course in their own language about what it's like to live here, and you don't go and kill the people so that they can get the full sentence? Now, I don't know if they ended up being repeat offenders. Maybe they did, but they would have thought, hey, we didn't even get a slap on the wrist, for goodness sakes. And they were able to. And again, they're rural peasants, illiterate peasants in their own country. So being put up in a prison cell, being fed, and having a doctor check you over, saying, hey, this is not so bad. There's certainly nothing like they get in their own country, where they'd be stripped and beaten badly for this sort of unlawful behaviour. Now, so that's one example. The same goes for say, activists to shut down the entire centre of a city on the basis of climate change. Well, they've got this crazy notion that they're the only ones holding the line against the climate, the Armageddon that was going to end tomorrow. I mean, every major institution, every political party, every every media out, everyone is on board with climate change. So these idiot kids have the chutzpah to say, we're fighting back against the man and we're the only ones. Yeah, we're fighting Nazis. Because they've got that stupid notion. But they go around creating mayhem, creating property damage, shutting down farms from operating, shutting the downtown the city. Now, even if they do get arrested, which is reasonably rare, but if they do, it's incredible how lackluster the Department of Prosecutions is. They do much, again, very junior, don't give a shit lawyers are put on it, themselves activists that do everything they can to do a shit job of getting a conviction. It's staggering how often these people get brought before a very activist judge who goes, you're doing great work because the client is really important. You're doing great work, kids. You go back out there and do some more. I'll let you off without charge. And by the way, you're not even going to get a fine. And they walk straight out the door and start doing it again. Now, when Black Lives Matter and those sort of groups are assembling to go and do a protest and do marching and do this and do that, also organising to commit arson and various other offences, property damage, then they're using the social media networks to do it. The police and the authorities could easily, effortlessly track what they're up to, and they could be right there on the spot and they could arrest them and throw them in prison and so on. But somehow they don't. The police are nowhere in sight. There's no attempt to stop them or intercede or do anything at all. Even though it's illegal to go roaming around in paramilitary uniforms, the police seem strangely reluctant to go anywhere near them. They don't want to upset them, don't want to touch them. Now, if they do get seriously out of hand, some of them will be arrested. Most of them are dropped. The charges are dropped by the Department of Prosecution. Bail is paid for by NGOs for all of them, and then they can go back on the street and do more mayhem. For the ones that do make it in front of a judge, the majority of those get thrown. So 2 or 3% of the Antifa Black Lives Matter protesters who are arrested, and they've got to be pretty bad to get arrested because the police are really hands off. Only 2 or 3% of them actually end up doing time in prison. So it's hardly a deterrent. And yet, by contrast, there's a group that are opposed to immigration. They're opposed to Black Lives Matter, that sort of thing, and that I think they're mostly white, and they're all men, and they're all, as I understand, straight. They use social media just to have a protest. They're not going to, and the police are right onto it. They're intercepted as soon as they assemble, and there's probably agitators and agents provocateurs working in the middle of them, and the police are right there on the spot, and they're all detained, they're all arrested, and vigorous prosecutions then follow. So there are very different standards of law that are applied if you support the globalist project, as BLM does, creating social and race division. Then you're really a friend of the globalists, and the authorities that are owned by the globalists now won't really do much to you. But if you're against globalization, against mass migration, against these things, and you organise in any way, bang, the police are now no longer to arresting criminals or trying to prevent crime. They are there solely to prevent opposition to the globalist project. They have no other purpose anymore. Now, there's a few sort of surveys that I read about the amount of college kids and the breakup between gender and the courses they're studying, and there's quite a few colleges, not only in the United States, but across the West, where something like 65% of the female students, And bear in mind that nearly all the female students are studying sociology or lesbian dance theory or something like that. All these soft bullshit courses. Something like 65. So the low IQ women have been going to college. They're 65% of them think that free speech is actually hate speech. And free speech is what Hitler did. They're Nazis. And we have to fight back against Nazis, Hitler. And so 65% of them say that free speech and that there should be other controls on free speech. Well, what about controls on you in calling people Nazis? Oh, no. There shouldn't be any controls on that. The controls have to be on them. We're morally superior. They're morally inferior, so they have to have the controls, but we don't. But 65% say that free speech is hate speech. Similarly, a majority say that, this is over 70%, say that a conservative speaker coming to campus that may upset trans people should not be allowed to come on campus. So, well, the trans people don't have to go to the talk. But when they come, they might enable and give support to people who don't like trans people, and then that shouldn't be. And so they've got this linking that if you're straight, white, and Christian, then you're a fascist. If you're a fascist, that means you're a Nazi, and if you're a Nazi, it means you're Hitler. And so they've got this enabling concept of one leads to the next, leads to the next. Now, when that argument's reversed on them, well, gay marriage will lead to transgender and drag queens at libraries and this sort of thing. No, that won't happen. So they've got a very one-sided view of this. But I was surprised that, if you take out the women doing sociology type courses from university, then the amount of people that accept, freedom of thought and freedom of speech and that sort of thing, and freedom from ideology, actually go back to the majority. So if you take out all the affirmative action students in university, if you just take them out, then university would default back to what it was beforehand, and that is a centre of excellence and of advanced learning for higher IQ people. And we need to get back there as quickly as possible. This idea of all these low IQ people being affirmative actioned into university, or given jobs for that matter, is destroying the West, and we need to do everything we can to stop it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.